Alright, it's lap guide time again. Let's go back to the beginning. Okay, so we'll talk about sunset at the end of the lap. For qualifying again, same as last week, run right out to the wall at the back of the track and get a little bit of a better run onto the straight for your qualifying lap. So for turn one, I'm going to get obviously nice and close to the wall. And the braking point for me is kind of just before the little cutaway section of the wall. So conveniently right behind that bridge. There we go. Yeah, so pretty much right at that point where the wall starts to move away from you. And you kind of aim the car into that extra space. And the turning point is the furthest part of the wall. So as always, I'm heavily on the brake in a straight line, and then releasing a lot of brake pressure as I start to turn. Aim for your apex cone. And then as soon as you hit the apex, pick up the throttle again. Be careful not to run out wide. And if you clip the grass there, you'll get fired into the wall on the left. So if you are running wide, either straighten up the wheel or lift before you hit the grass to give yourself at least a bit of a better chance of saving it. So then we're straight into turn two. Cutting across this, whatever that is, access road, just to straighten up the braking zone a bit, and then braking kind of at the apex of this corner, if we can consider this a corner. Keeping the car over to the right, and then there's a series of sort of late apexes coming up. So the first left is a really late apex. We're apexing right, sort of as you're out of the corner almost. So kind of ignore the first two that it tempts you with. It's the third one that you want, and then the exit doesn't matter. The exit doesn't matter again for the right-hander. The sole focus of this section is the exit of the left-hander onto the back straight. So I'm actually just hopping over the curbs here. This is a clean lap, by the way, so the amount of track you see me using here is a clean lap. Just hopping over the curbs just to get to this point. This curb here is a reference for the left-hander. So we get to that, jump on the brakes, and then this is a really, really late apex. So from on board, it's actually kind of hard to see, but there's a little like spike in the curb. There's a kind of a sharper piece of curb. It's just there. That's the apex, or just behind that is the apex. Just there. I can see that in VR way better than I can on my monitor. Yeah, and then you don't want to hit these curbs on the outside because one's quite tall, this one's quite tall, and then it drops down to a flat curb. So if you're actually tracking out and you miss the big curb, you're okay. But if you run onto this curb and then onto this one, the car bounces and you'll lose a lot of momentum. Okay, this bit's straightforward enough. With traffic, the Nissans are gonna want to pass you around the outside, and then you're gonna want to be on the left. So there's a crossing over point here where you need to either check your mirror, or if there's 3 or 4 Nissans coming on your outside, then just take the middle of the track for the hairpin. But in terms of just the correct line, you would hug the inside and then drift over to the left. Braking is just sort of halfway between the bridge and the first set of cones. On this lap I was kind of late on the brakes for the hairpin, so struggling a bit to get it stopped. A bit of a theme of this track as well is the rear of the car is really squirming around on the brakes. You'll see if you look through again that I'm making quite a lot of corrections when I'm braking. So all the way down to first, and then as soon as you see this curb, or as soon as you're pointing at that curb, just full throttle. It's flat all the way through here. And we're braking on the 4 cones. First set of cones. Actually, you can really see the car squirming around there. And I prefer to use second here. Again, it's a late apex, sort of picking up right at the back end of the curb. Mostly because, like, if that was a straight after this corner, you would apex it in the middle and run out to the left, like a standard, any kind of standard corner. But because we're going immediately left, you're apexing really late and staying on the right-hand side and heading straight. It's a compromised line, so you're not really crossing the halfway point of the track, a bit like the Suzuka S's video, just pretending like this half of the track doesn't even exist. And then I was just, that's quite a big lift. You can get away with less of a lift if you, basically the more you compromise this corner and get further right, the easier these 2 lefts are. So there's lap time to be won and lost, and it doesn't really matter where you get it from, to be honest. You can, if you're trying to pass somebody, then it's a whole different story. You can use different lines to get an advantage into different corners. But basically, any time gained here, you'll lose through the 2 lefts, and vice versa. So I'm having to use a little bit of a lift, just to pitch the weight forward, just to help me turn through this corner. And then you'll see some people like to kind of aggressively get the car left and then turn right and then straighten up that braking zone and brake later. I prefer just to kind of turn it into a double right-hander and brake through the cornering phase. So here I kind of turn in and straighten up this bit as much as I can, but I will be on the brakes sooner than somebody taking the other line. And then miss the apex by a mile. This is a really tough corner. And because of the missed apex, I do run a little bit wide. Still a clean lap, apparently. There is, it's worth just pointing out, there is like a dip on the apex of tower, so if you get it right, the car kind of hugs the inside. Okay, so again, a little lift there just to help rotate the car down to third gear, and this wasn't my fastest lap, but this is the best demonstration of the line through these last important corners here. So you're basically going a full half a car, or nearly half a car, on over the inside of the curb. So I think the trigger point for the slowdown is the middle of the car. Well, I know it is, but what I mean is once the middle of the car crosses the inside of the curb. So that's about as much as you can cut there. There's a little tiny bit more, but that's a good example of how to cut that. You can cut this curb, but it's a little bit more bumpy, so it depends if it's working for you with your particular setup, if it's stable enough that it's not messing you up for the right-hander, which is a much more important corner, then go for it. If not, maybe just take this apex normally, just with the left side tyres. So then all of this is all usable out to the left here. You'll see particularly the Nissans will go really, really wide here, because they have so much more grip through that previous section, so they can really go wide and straighten up the corner there. So again, this right-hander, we're cutting half a car over the curb, which helps just straighten up the corner, and then we can use all this exit curb. And obviously you need to make sure you're back on the track by the time the grass takes over. And then braking at the 3 marker. And I actually turn in to aim for this wall and then brake in a straight line. So braking heavily, keeping the car in a sort of straight line. I'm only applying a small amount of steering. Let the car drift back out to the white line while you're braking. And then there's like 1,000 different lines for sunset, but my line is to brake in as straight as line I can, and then use the yellow line here as a sort of apex. That's my apex, and then there's a bump there, and there's another bump here somewhere, and you should be getting on throttle just sort of before that bump. Or by getting on throttle, I mean fully back, full throttle, because you're using a bit of throttle all the way through. So yeah, I'm actually getting on the throttle just after the first bump. So there's the bump, and then I'm picking up the throttle. And then there's the second bump, just there by the cone. And then run the car all the way out wide. So yeah, that's a lap of Sebring. I actually had to do way more laps this week than normal. It's quite hard to get into a rhythm here, actually. So I was quite surprised. I kind of considered Sebring to be relatively straightforward, but I was really struggling with the setup. So yeah, hopefully there's something helpful in the lap guide this week.